Welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, a conversation through the careers of writer Simon Furman and artist Andrew Wildman. Recollections and revelations about the highs and the lows as creatives in comics, books, games, film and TV.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 14 of The Rest is Giant Robots, the podcast of myself and Andrew Wildman, and I am the Simon Furman half of that equation.
And I'm the Andrew Wildman part of that equation.
And yes, this time we're going to do something a little different. Well, we've been slightly threatening to do this for a while, but we've been getting listener questions into the podcast HQ, and we're going to work our way through some of those this podcast, which is going to be different because it'll range us across a bunch of different things, mostly Transformers, I have to say.
Yeah, who'd have thought, eh?
Yeah, funny that. There was I thinking there might be one question on Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah.
Mind you,
Or even what's your favourite breakfast cereal?
Yeah. What is my favourite? Crunchy nut cornflakes, I would have to say.
Yeah,
What about you?
No, I used to be a massive breakfast cereal fan, and I used to like finding combinations of breakfast cereals. And I decided once that I was going to write a book about it.
Wow.
It was going to be called Serial Killer.
Oh no.
But yeah, there's some interesting conversations. I always like Shreddies and Rice Krispies together.
Okay.
I don't know why they just they just kind of, it's the textures, the different crunches, but I don't do that anymore. I'm because of my age, I'm a muesli, yogurt and fruit kind of man.
Okay. Fair enough.
All part of my health kick. Like muesli was I'd kind of cut a lot of dairy out, so I have like coconut yogurt, so it's not dairy. And then blueberries, got to get your polyphenols, apparently.
Absolutely. It's the question no one asked and no one wanted to know the answer to,
It
but we've
wasn't
given it.
Yeah, it wasn't in the list of questions, but there we go.
So shall we kick off with question one, or just question in the order slightly we've put them in here?
Yeah, so then they're not in order that they came in, because some of these questions go back kind of a little while from when we first started it, but so we've just been kind of saving them, but in no particular order. So first one comes in from Jasper Vandenbrink. Thanks, Jasper. Thanks for kicking this all off. Brilliant. So he says, my son Xavi, I presume that's how that's probably Xavier, Professor,
Yep.
even.
Yes.
Not Xavier, as people used to call it.
You would have thought he'd already know the answer to these questions before we gave them.
Yeah, well, he's only 11, so give him a break.
True, yes, yes. The mutant gene hasn't kicked in yet.
No, so my son Xavi, 11, wanted to ask you both who your all-time favorite Transformer is. So we might as well kick off with that, classic question, who your all-time favorite Transformer is. And Simon, is that the same character you love to write stories about the most?
Not necessarily. Although, it's no big secret that my favorite Transformers character is Grimlock, and I will put him in stories wherever and however I can, basically. But yeah, Grimlock is my favorite character, but strangely, some of my most favorite characters to write are some of the smaller, lesser known characters. Bob Budiansky did a great job with the bios and weaknesses and strengths and everything else about the characters. So there was a lot of stuff defined about those classic Generation 1 characters. But later on in the run, I got to cover some of the other characters, lesser known ones that didn't have as much background material. So I found I could layer on a lot more stuff into a Bludgeon or a Thunderwing, or even like in Beast Wars, a character called Razor Beast, there was next to nothing about that character. So I could almost create that character from the ground up. And
Yeah.
I slightly feel more, I guess, paternal about those characters because they've got more of me in them.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair point. Yeah. You like to take ownership a little bit, don't you, these things?
Yeah, but yeah, Grimlock still, is my go-to bot if I can in terms of a Transformers story.
And where does your long time love of Grimlock come from? Like why in
Well,
particular? Was it something to do with the first stuff that you wrote that
pretty much, yeah. I mean, there was a little bit. Issue 8 of the US comic more or less had the Dinobots exit stage left and move out of the US story, which sort of freed them up for us to use. And so,
hmm,
yeah, after The Enemy Within and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my next story was this, apart from Decepticon Dam Busters, was a Dinobot story, really. It was the Wrath of Guardian, the Wrath of Grimlock.
hmm,
And I think during that, Bob had played him not as dumb as in the sort of cartoon show and monosyllabic, but he still was sort of pretty, sort of me Grimlock King
hmm,
kind of lev. But I started layering in more character texture for Grimlock, a little more, that's a kind of image he projects, but there's a lot more to him than that. And it's just a kind of like a shield almost,
right.
that sort of gruff. I mean, he is gruff and no nonsense, but I just wanted to say there was more to him, literally, than met the eye.
Yeah.
That old one. But yes, yeah, I just kind of he became more to me because I started adding, I think, extra layers to his character. And
Hmm.
then yes, over the course of the next bunch of stories up to in the national interest, we used the Dinobots a lot. So yeah, I got pretty fond of all of them really. And yeah, Grimlock stayed that sort of number one spot.
Yeah. No, it's good. And I guess the way that you kind of broadened out the character then became then what subsequent writers would write him as. Did they follow in that, or did they
Yeah,
just
I,
go
I
back to the
guess
source?
so. I mean, when we get to the war within, the Grimlock there is very much the Grimlock I established, if you like, personality-wise in the Marvel UK stories.
Mm,
So, yeah, I guess from that bit on, that becomes more the template for Grimlock than the me Grimlock King kind of animated version.
yeah, awesome.
So,
Um,
second part of Zavi's question, Andrew,
yeah,
is your favorite Transformer also the one you love to draw the most?
um, it's such a good question, isn't it? I mean, the question of who's your favorite Transformer is a classic and an obvious question, but I think about this. I think so, yeah. I mean, I've had various favorites over the years, but now for 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 a long time now, Optimus Prime is my classic sort of, G1 Optimus Prime is my favorite. Although that wasn't the one that I originally, drew in the Marvel books. It was the Power Master Prime. But I think it was because of when we did Regeneration One. I had different favorites up until that point, and in the sort of fallow years, whatever. There was a time where uh, uh, what's the guy's name? I'll get there in a minute.
Oh, dead air, dead air.
Dead air again, yeah. While his brain just completely grinds to a halt. Oh my days! What the? Okay,
Which
Galvatron.
cat?
There we go.
Galvatron, thank you. Yes, I thought it might be Galvatron, but
Yeah,
okay, off you
but you
go.
thought you'd give me a moment just to
Yes,
gather my
just
thoughts.
just to stumble around.
Yeah, so Galvatron was my favorite for a long, long time from back, when I used to draw the original stuff, for all sorts of reasons, mostly because he was the most anthropomorphic. I suppose he looked like a superhero, and that's what I wanted to draw at the time. But when we hit Regeneration 1, there were various characters that I really enjoyed drawing that I hadn't even considered before, Cup being one of them. But because in some ways it was a different approach to Regeneration One. We decided both of us, didn't we, before we did it, that we actually wanted to make it just kind of like mean something and move towards that conclusion. And I think the gravitas of Optimus Prime in that came through very strong. And so I really felt the weight of that character. Um, and and that's when I really had to do that thing where, because he hasn't got a mouth, like how do you express that weight of responsibility? And so I kind of probably gave him more attention than any of the others. And so post Regeneration One, he's now quite well and firmly established as it's my favorite character and favorite to draw.
Can you hear that? It's my phone going off.
There's
Just
somebody ringing
wait.
saying, "For Christ's sake, shut Wildman up, will you?"
Yeah, it's probably a question coming in even as we speak on air. If only we were doing
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry that I interrupted you.
Yeah, did you hear what I said? I had finished.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Right, right. We'll move on. Well, thank you, Zavi. That was great questions, and questions you might think you could answer in 2 seconds. We took a lot longer, mostly because Andrew was fumbling around. But hey, so our next question is from Peter Hodgson, and we know Peter very well. We meet him at conventions a lot. So hello, Peter and Andrew. During
Yes.
your run on the comic UK 283 to 332, your first printed cover to the final issue. Oh, sorry. During the comic run 283 to 332, your first printed cover. Are there any stories by another artist you would have liked to have drawn at the time? Wow.
I
Okay.
didn't read it, so I don't know. I didn't read the comic. I mean, that sounds crazy, doesn't it? But so of the Marvel of the time my time on that, like Peter says, right from my first printed cover all the way up to the final issue. Um, no, I didn't read it. I'm sorry. I do apologize. I'm sure it was good. So I can't really answer that question. But
Well,
yeah,
once you started drawing the interiors, did you look at other parts of, say, Time Wars and think, oh, I would have liked to have drawn that part of Time Wars or
no,
anything like that? So you
no.
wouldn't have liked to have had to draw Galvatron's eyes popping out of his sockets in the final part.
Yeah, I just didn't look at it. I mean, I've got a young family, I was busy. So I
Ah,
apologize. I know I've disgraced myself.
okay, well, moving swiftly on then.
Yeah, sorry, Peter.
So our next question. Sorry, Andrew, you read the next
I'll
question.
read this. So this is from Russell Sheath, again, somebody we know.
Hi,
He's
Russ.
yeah. Hi, Russ. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for your ongoing support in everything we do. Um, so this is a question to both of us from Russ. Having collaborated and worked together for so long, have you guys developed a shorthand to how you work compared to how you work with other writers or artists?
Good question. I mean, it's funny. I can't really base it because actually, strangely, you and I haven't worked together for a while. Have
No, no, not since Regen, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that would have been the last time. So, I can only base my answer to that on having worked with Jeff Senior on To the Death and Martin Stiff on 5 Points. I have
Hmm.
definitely grown a shorthand now, especially if I'm working on a very collaborative project with an artist I know well, that both those times I wrote them more as screenplay scripts with minimal sort of stage direction and mostly the dialogue,
Hmm.
a certain amount of scene setting and what we need, but mostly no panel breakdown at all, trusting both those artists you know, to give them the freedom as well to choose the best shots, the best page layouts,
Hmm.
and sometimes what to do, what not to do, what to do more of, what to do less, but to get the same, progression of story and dialogue over. So yeah, I'd say my style has changed, and I would imagine if you and I were working on something, given that you now write your own stuff, I would be much more, here's the loose outline, you know,
Right.
do your thing with it, and then we can almost beat it into shape at the stage where we look at roughs and page layouts.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, God, I thinking back to Regen, well, even back to the kind of Marvel or War Within stuff, but just thinking back as far as Regen, because that's the most recent thing. Was that full? That wasn't full script, was
It,
it?
it, it was full script,
It was
yeah.
full script. Okay. So, I mean, full script. Just to kind of get some clarification around this, full script is not that dissimilar from writing a like a film script in as much as it has all the dialogue. But yeah, I see what you mean. Film script style would allow the artist more room, but they already know what the dialogue is. With Marvel plot style, obviously, it was, the dialogue wasn't necessarily there, just suggestions of it. So, so it's really interesting. You said I didn't know that actually. That you're saying that you write film script style for Jeff and for Martin on the new collaborations that you've done, and that sounds like a really good way to work to me because the Marvel style is fine for dramatic visuals, which is why Stan Lee did it. But I think as a writer, I mean, I would imagine you want to tell the story, in the dialogue, and especially when it's your own project, you don't want the artist to go completely free reign. You've got to, but you allow them to choose the shots. So it's very much like being a storyboard artist. So I'm very used to working on film scripts. So if ever we do a project together,
I
we would, yeah, it'd be good to do it that way.
suppose the last thing we worked on maybe was Matt Hatter in that way, was it? Or was Regen after Matt Hatter? I don't know, because Matt Hatter would have been written as obviously as a teleplay and
Mm,
just you would have broken it down in storyboard form from
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Well, then, yeah. If that, I can't remember the order these things came in, but
No.
yeah, so we are familiar with that. But I mean, in terms of a shorthand, I guess, certainly around Transformers, it's kind of easy. It's an easy get to know what's going on because we've kind of dealt with those characters for so long. But the bottom the bottom line is, especially if Regen was full script, which now you mention it, yeah, I do know, is I'd largely just do what I'm told, but then what there is for me to do is to just really get the emotion in it, by the body language and the facial expressions.
Yeah.
That's how I approached it. And also because I was already working as a storyboard artist when we were working on Regen, I quite often I did just do series of horizontal panels.
Mm,
You can see the kind of film and TV influence on Regeneration One if you go back and have a look, as opposed
mm.
to earlier comic stuff.
I think the bottom line is if we were working on something creator owned together, we
Yeah,
would probably really shorthand the process so it didn't feel like one or other of us was sort of, too in overall in charge of it, I guess.
yeah,
But I guess if we were working on, say, Transformers for a company, say we were doing something in the future for Skybound, it would be dictated by, I would imagine, how they work and how they prefer to work, be it
I
full
guess so.
script, plot, So I think probably we would be bound by whatever format they would be most comfortable us working in for a editorial approval and Hasbro approval.
Don't they know who we are? Surely they would pander to our requests.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
but
interesting. Isn't it? Well, I mean, there you go. One of these days we'll do a graphic novel of the engine. How about that? That'd be fun, wouldn't
that would be good. Yes, yeah,
it?
yeah. Well, that's something to consider for the future, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for that question, Russ.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. Okay, on to the next one. Graham Moffat. Hi, Graham. Thanks for the question. this is one to both of us, but so I'll read it all out. Hi, Simon and Andrew. Really enjoying the episodes so far. And I always find it interesting to hear about the other books you did work on from the 80s. And the question is there any franchise from that era you'd like to have worked on that you didn't, Simon?
Wow,
Any
yeah.
80s franchise that you'd
I
have liked to
don't
work on?
I don't know. I mean, so many of them came through Marvel UK at the time that,
Hmm.
Action Force, Thundercats, got to work on them all. But I don't know. I was, it's funny. I'm sure I could have turned my hand to it, but I was never the biggest fan of Masters of the Universe.
Hmm.
And, you know, but I'd have been interested just to have a go at it. I think it would have been kind of fun just to see, well, okay, I may not be the hugest fan of the show,
Yeah.
but can I do something interesting with this? I always grappled a bit with a hero who was called He-Man. Don't ask me why. I just thought, oh God, really?
And
Sort
that
of.
haircut, I mean, what's with that haircut?
But no, I mean, things we had all sorts going on with Visionaries and Galaxy Rangers. I don't think I
Mm.
worked on Galaxy Rangers, but it was there in the Marvel office all the time, coming across our desks, real Ghostbusters. I didn't work on that, but I think that would have been quite fun. But, you know, the other thing I was acutely aware of Marvel UK was I was doing a lot of stuff anyway. And it was nice to have things like real Ghostbusters where other
Mm.
people could play with that and not have me sort of jumping in doing stories. And Thundercats, to an extent, I did a couple, but then I
Yeah.
dropped right out.
Yeah. I guess as you kind of ran through them there, right? Yeah, it made me realize how many of them I did work on to a greater or lesser extent. So yeah, I did real Ghostbusters, Visionaries. I remember doing at least one Visionaries cover.
Mm.
Galaxy Rangers. I worked on that. What else?
Did
I
you
think
ever
I
work for,
worked. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, did you ever work for London Editions, the people who did
Yeah, I did.
Masters of the Universe?
I did do Masters of the Universe, and I also did Brave Star for
Right.
them as well. Whether Masters of the Universe, where they had this strange colouring technique because we coloured our own work as well as pencil and ink it for them. So yeah, so I did all of that. I can't think of actually the one thing I didn't work on, which I think in hindsight would have been fun to work on because I was so superhero focused. So Thundercats, yeah, Master of the Universe, yeah, they were good ones to work on if you were trying to create stepping stones towards a superhero career with Marvel. Um, but I'd have quite liked to work on Turtles. That would have been good.
Hmm.
I think I like to think I'd have done a good take on Turtles.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure I ever did anything on Turtles either. So yeah. Yeah, that might have been
Hmm.
quite fun.
I can't think of any other 80s franchises. Well, I mean, yeah, G.I. Joe. Was one called Mask, wasn't there?
Yes, there was Mask, but I didn't work on that, but didn't
Yeah.
feel particularly any great need to either.
No, no, can't think of any others.
I
I'm
mean, I
sure
think,
there were hundreds, weren't there?
yeah, yes,
So many
it was,
cartoon books as well,
yeah.
many of which we
But
didn't
no,
have. Yeah,
offhand, yes, maybe Turtles is the same answer for both of us. That could have been quite fun.
yeah, there we go. Well, just putting that out there.
Okay,
Right,
so
so the next one's for you. This is from Peter Hodgson again. Hi, Peter, again.
yes, yep.
See if we can
Hello.
do better with this question than we did with his previous
Yes,
one. He's very specific about his questions, which is great.
yes.
So it says, Simon, re Earth Force UK issues 261 to 289. Was the run of stories you worked on just that set number of issues, or are there extra ones not used? Also, are the issues in the order that the stories are written, or have they been changed?
I would say pretty much those 5-page black and white stories we're dealing with here at the tail end of Marvel UK were all written and published in the order they were written and pub. I'd
Right.
never had, I don't think there was much chopping or changing around. And the Earth Force idea kind of grew organically out of that. I just think it was a weird. The funny thing is, with those black and white stories, the first two stories were actually 11-page stories chopped up into 5 and 6 page segments.
Mm,
And those ones were supposed to be the foundation of the whole idea of this sort of renegade old school band of Autobots going around. That
mm,
was where it was supposed to be this sort of rift between, the core Autobots and this very G1 centric bunch of characters.
mm,
So that was the idea. But then when we went to just 5-page black and white stories, you had to be a lot more compact with everything. There wasn't a great deal of scope for long form storytelling when you just
mm.
had 5 pages each week. So from that point on, they became much more focused, episodic, character-led stories that, yes, kind of fitted under this Earth Force banner, but
Mm,
actually they were fairly just, okay, I need a story here, I need these characters, and they might well have fitted an Earth Force bill, but there was nothing more than the next 5 pager and the next 5 pager. We didn't do much chopping and changing.
right. Interesting. Okay. I didn't fully understand the question, but that makes complete sense now that you've answered it. You know, that they could very easily have been swapped around, but no. Good. Okay, next question. It's another one from Simon, so I'll read it. And this is from a listener who goes by the name of Playback. We've had quite a few questions in from Playback here and there, and just general comments and whatever. So thanks for all of those. Anyway, this one is. I'd be interested to know if Simon enjoyed using the G.I. Joe characters in the various Transformers crossovers he did, or was it yet another set of characters to attempt to fit into the story somehow?
Yeah, I would say I enjoyed it. They were very much stablemates, Transformers and G.I. Joe slash Action Force.
Hmm.
And they didn't feel strangely too bad a fit. The idea that, at some point a military unit would come into contact with giant robots battling on Earth kind of felt, well, yes,
Mm,
that would happen. And I never had a problem with, you know, pairing them up. And we also, in a very sort of cynical company way, had two comics, Transformers and Action Force, that we very much wanted to feel like part of the same universe. So, readers of one might well go and read the other comic as well. So when we did the crossover story, it literally started in a Transformers comic, and then moved into 4 issues of Action Force. So
okay.
that was a very, some might call it cynical ploy to get Transformers readers to also sort of be aware of pick up Action Force. I'm not sure in hindsight it did more than up the numbers for those 4 issues of Action Force, after which it
Right.
sort of went back down. But it was very much like, well, we're both Hasbro owned characters. It's nice to do a kind of a featuring Action Force story.
Mm,
And yeah, no, I enjoyed Ancient Relics. I thought it was a fun little story, and we got to pick up various threads and introduce some new human characters in that as well. Um, I'm pretty sure it was Ancient Relics that I introduced my character called Susan Hoff, who was actually Susanna Hoffs,
yeah.
basically from the Bangles. And Lee Sullivan, Jeff Senior drew her first, but Lee Sullivan drew her even more looking like Susanna Hoffs of the Bangles.
I can quite imagine he would. I'm sure he enjoyed the reference material.
Absolutely. But no, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed later crossovers as well. I think they work well together generally. So yeah, no
Yeah.
problem on that front.
Had 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 Marvel US done that kind of crossover or match up before?
They did. They did a 4 issue G.I. Joe versus the Transformers, or G.I. Joe, just G.I. Joe slash Transformers
Mm,
series. And it was a weird one because that 4 issue series, it wasn't written by Bob. Budiansky. I think it was by Mike. Somebody can correct me on that. Anyway, somebody else wrote that series, and it felt a little different.
Yeah.
It didn't quite comfortably fit into Bob's continuity, and yet it contains the changeover between Bumblebee into Goldbug.
Uh,
You know, Bumblebee becomes Goldbug in that series, but the
mm,
series itself exists a little bit out of the main continuity. So Bob, I guess, was left with Bumblebee is now Goldbug in the main
mm,
series,
mm.
which was kind of strange. But yeah, yes, they did it. And then, Dreamwave did a G.I. Joe Transformers one. They set that in World War II, which was kind of fun.
Mm,
And it was drawn by Jay Lee, who went
yeah.
on to do a lot of stuff for Marvel.
Mm,
So yeah, that was a good one. And yeah, I think ever since, and in fact, in the IDW era, Transformers and G.I. Joe were more or less sharing the same general story background for a chunk of issues.
mm, yeah.
Yeah, it became much more. And then the IDW era had, other Hasbro characters like Rob and
Right.
trying to think who else, but they used other, maybe Mask actually appeared in it. So
Mhm.
yes, there was a lot of crossover stuff going on at that stage. But yeah, I think it's been fun to do and will probably keep happening. I'm sure at some point Skybound, I'm pretty sure they've got this shared Energon universe anyway, which features both Transformers and G.I. Joe from the kickoff.
Oh, right. Yeah, cool. And of course, Devil's Due. I did a
Mm.
the Black Horizons thing.
Yeah, they
That
did
was a
about three or
crossover book.
four. They did about three or four series, I think, crossover one
Mm, yeah.
between the two. Mm,
Yeah, they are a good fit. I think, like you say, the kind of military, specialist military group involved with giant robots that happen to have landed on Earth. Yeah, you can imagine that had happened. Good,
good.
nice one.
Yep. Right, I'm going to do the next one. I'll jump ahead a bit because there's a question for both of us from Daria Sigma, but I'm going to start with the Andrew half of his question. And
Okay.
it's Andrew, what did you use for reference for the characters? So I take it we're talking about Transformers characters,
Hmm.
the action figures, others' art of the same characters, something else.
Okay. Well, for Transformers, I work working on the UK book first. I very often the only reference you have for things when you're working in comics is like the work of previous artists. Um, but there were the sort of character sheets from the movie sort of reference. There was that.
Yep,
Um, I was also given a VHS tape probably by you, Simon. I don't know.
probably.
A VHS tape of the Transformers movie, the animated movie. That never found its way back to the Marvel UK office.
Yeah.
I still have it somewhere. Um,
Excellent.
so so it would have been just from watching that. It would have been from the character sheets that were from the movie. Um, I didn't, and other artists' work. I did reference other artists' work from the UK comic, but not Jeff because his style was so different from mine. It didn't seem very easy to reference and then in some way interpret it in my style. So and Lee Sullivan's work I always thought was kind of in between. His work was quite like Jeff, but a little bit more like mine. But in fact, there was such a variety of art styles on a book. It's incredible how different everybody's art style was. But mostly for me, it was those character sheets from the movie.
Yeah,
And then obviously there was the book, the Marvel Transformers Universe book
yeah,
which I still have and which I still use at conventions every now and then, although Google has taken over everything. So,
yeah, of course, yeah. But I mean, that was a very handy book, that Transformers Universe book that they bought out, which was all the character profiles. I think they did it as a four-issue series and then collected it.
Mm.
And it was a very useful book for me as well, just
Yeah.
because it had all the profile material in it.
Mm.
And my original copy of that, because often I had to send reference to people and just photocopy things, I ended up dismantling the whole book. And
Yeah.
so I could take pages out, photocopy send them to people. So in the end, I found a pristine or better copy on eBay, and although other marketing sites are available.
Are they though?
Yeah, I know, not really. Uh, and I've got a nice sort of crisp copy of it, but my old one was literally, had come to pieces.
Yeah, well, been through the wars. Yeah, mine's very, very dog-eared as well, but it's kind of cool, isn't it? It's got its
Hmm.
own story in a way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so the first part of that question from Darius Sigma
Hey,
is,
can I
oh,
stop? Can
sorry.
I stop you there, Andrew? We're
Yeah,
coming up to 40 minutes.
okay.
So is it easier at this point just to go, it's going to go weird and crackly in about 5 minutes
Yeah,
and start from this point?
we could start from this point. I'm wondering whether there's a second episode in this.
Well, you see, I'm starting to wonder that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got, sort of, we didn't do much preamble, so we've got a good 35 minutes here.
Mm,
So
mm.
what do you want to do at this stage?
If we finish off Daria's question,
Yep.
and then do another episode.
Yep.
I mean, we can
Sounds good.
carry on now, and then but I can just split it into two. I don't mind.
Okay, no, let's sort of wrap this one up. We'll do another one, I agree with you, but maybe we'll intersperse these a bit with
All right.
another kind of regular podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
so let's do that now. So
Hopefully it won't
and
crackle out before we finish this one.
yeah,
Okay.
we're back in the
All
room.
right. So yes, the question for Simon from Daria Sigma in this bit is, Simon, was it ever frustrating working on UK stories to have to undo things for when the US strip came back? And then in brackets, he said, I admit I'm mostly thinking of that first Predacon story where some of the same things were in both UK and US strips in rapid succession.
Yeah, we had issues. I mean, because the publication schedule was quite different. Often our introduction of characters was often staggered, so we had to key things in, like the launch of special teams. We had to key into Hasbro UK's marketing push. It definitely helped us to do that because we could jump onto their TV advertising and get a plug for the comic. So special teams needed to go into the comic ahead of where the reprinted US material would have, with them in it, with their introduction, would have come. So
Right.
that left us with a slight problem. How do we introduce special teams? These were the combining teams of Autobots and Decepticons. How do we introduce those before they actually appear in the chronology? Because as far as our readers in the UK were concerned, this was all one flowing story. It wasn't US and UK material.
Mm,
So we had to come up with a plot device, little stretched, which was Buster Witwicky, the human character, has had the Matrix in his head for a while, and he has a sort of Matrix-induced dream of the future where these special teams come into play. And
mm,
so we have a sort of almost flash forward adventure told by Buster Witwicky about the special teams. It was all very tortuous, but it just about worked. So yeah, there were often problems whereby we needed, in that case, characters in sooner than they appeared, or we had an issue with. I remember when around the Predacon story he mentions, it's Megatron is is sort of wiped out of the US story at that point. He disappears at the end of the Predacon story, and we didn't want Megatron gone from the story or Optimus Prime. So we came up with a storyline that again allowed Optimus Prime and Megatron to continue in the story, even though in the American storyline they were out of it. It was a we just decided our readership couldn't be without sort of such key characters. So
Mm.
yeah, we had difficult times sometimes, and really it led to a slight problem later that we almost had two Megatrons kicking around in the storyline because when he comes back, when I brought him back in the American, it's a question of, well, hang on, who's that Megatron who's been running around the UK story ever since?
Mm.
So we did actually do a 5-page story called The Two Megatrons, which explained why we had two Megatrons in the story or tried. So yes, many problems with trying to, lace those two continuities into one smooth reader experience. But generally we managed, there were only a couple of hiccups along the way. And mostly like I say, we chose to do things because we wanted characters not gone from the story. Bob's remit was really to clean house once in a while and bring in a fresh load of characters. But for us, Megatron, Optimus Prime were just characters we wanted front and center the whole time, and I
Mm.
think it worked for us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they are seen as the two main, protagonist and take for most
Yeah, so
people.
yeah, there were lots of bumps along the road where it came to um, you know, just trying to segue between those. We sometimes had to rewrite the tail end of, I remember with a circuit breaker one, we chopped off the end of the US story and then did our own UK version of that when we were ready to segue back into the American story.
Okay.
So yeah, there were various bits. I think Barry Kitson redrew that sequence, so it still looked like we were just going straight back into the next bit of American story.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
complicated,
Yeah,
but we
complicated, but
managed, I think. I mean,
you
I'm
did.
sure most kids, apart from maybe the art seemed a little, art and coloring were quite a sort of big change between those runs of UK and US, and they might have noticed that difference. I'm not sure story-wise our readership did overmuch.
Yeah,
Oh,
production techniques and everything were slightly different. That was always a problem. You could always tell when art had been changed or touched up, even going back to, the old Marvel comics, UK Marvel comics from the 70s or whatever. So,
yeah.
and spelling corrections, not,
Oh, yes, yes.
because of
Color on armor, we and those
But in
had to be changed.
Spider-Man, it was always neighborhood, your friendly neighborhood.
Yes, it was painstaking to do these changes. These days, it would be work of a moment in computer to make the lettering changes, but we had to literally take the black sheet of the printer's film, flip it over with a scalpel blade, scratch out the part of the word we wanted to change, and then with a fine point pen, re-letter with and squeezing in OU
Mm,
into that space. And yes, painstaking it really was. But that was the day back in the day. You had to do
mm.
everything by hand, more or less.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
Fantastic.
I, I think we're mostly out of time, and we've still got plenty more questions to go. So,
Yeah.
what say we do another one of these in the near future?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we do maybe the next episode we'll go back into picking up on the timeline of our career and say a bit more about this and then drop another Q&A in. Yeah, it'd be good to do another one like this. We've still
Yeah,
got, like you say, we've still got plenty of questions.
we have, and please do send us more questions. This is your chance to ask whatever burning questions you have from about our careers, about Transformers, about anything we've worked on, really. If you're an Alpha Flight fan or, you know, Spider-Man 2099 fan, sort of do send us your questions on some of the other things we've worked on as well.
Mm, definitely. Good. All right, Simon. Great as always.
Yeah,
Um,
wonderful stuff.
I'll catch you here again for episode 15.
Yep, look forward to it. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone. See you. Thank you for listening to The Rest is Giant Robots. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing for more and maybe share with like-minded friends. This has been a Wildfur production.